$100,000, $200,000 sitting in their bank account, ready to pounce on the next property when they've sold. It is rare. There are options. We're going to talk about them today. We're going to talk about deposit bonds, release of deposits, make it easy for you. Speak soon.
Morning,
Billy.
Captain. How are we?
Saturday night, Billy. Good.
Good. Very good. Deposit bonds. Yeah. Would you call this a unicorn move, Mark?
They're more rarer than they used to be, but the issue is people often think, you know what, it's going to be too hard to make the move because I don't have the deposit ready. And I think, look, as real estate agents, you think, you expect that people know the ins and outs, and they don't. So the pickle that people are in is they are going to sell. How am I going to put a deposit onto a next place because I don't have the money? They are sold, and they're like, you know what, I'm just stuck. I have to actually settle on it. What do I have to do? Rent something and then get my money, get my 100% proceeds. And there's this big disjoint feeling between getting out of the place I sold and getting into the place I want to buy, and I don't physically have that 10% deposit in my pocket.
Yeah. So would you, because obviously selling itself, you've put a little bit of money into the campaign, maybe. You've obviously, prepaid some legal expenses, things like that. So you've already spent a bit of cash to get you to this point.
Yep.
I can imagine it'd be pretty scary knowing that you need to sell, but you don't know where you're going to go next. So this sounds like a really good option. And like you said, it's not normal for people to hold, like a 10% deposit, 100, 200,000 in a bank account, cash ready to go.
No, absolutely not. And it's scary, but there's options. There's some really bloody good options out there.
Yeah. Well, I've got a lot of questions for you this morning because I've got no idea what a deposit bond is.
Yep. I'm ready for him.
Okay. So when or how do you start the process of getting one? Do you have to have your property on the market? Do you have to have a bank evaluation that can give you an indication of how much this deposit can be? How does it work?
Okay. So a deposit bond is a method of payment for a deposit that most sellers, people selling their property, would accept. It's not bank on exchange, so there's no physical cash. So the best way I like to explain it, which is a bit weird but it makes sense, is it's almost like a bank check that never gets cashed. So it's what happens is a purchaser says, yes, I want to buy a property. A seller says, yes, I want to sell my property. The contract is signed, and then a deposit bond is issued by the purchaser's bond provider and accepted by the vendor. So what that means is the purchaser didn't. So let's say we're doing a purchase price on $1 million. There's $100,000 deposit that has to be paid. The purchaser will get a deposit bond, and they will use that deposit bond to give to the vendor, and the vendor's like, great, I've got that now. But they never actually bank that, almost like bank check, unless the deal falls over. They can bank it. They can draw down on the bond.
Right. So who provides the bond?
Deposit Power Bond are the big boys out there. I believe there's only a couple of providers in the country. These guys basically are built for this exact purpose this exact sort of transaction where they're there to help that that person who's sold and going into that place to purchase, and they don't have the liquid cash to put a deposit down. So they're called bond providers.
Right. So they're banks. Are they're big banks, or are they credit unions? How do you find these people? They're like underground.
Look, I guess you could say that they're pretty much offering security to sellers on behalf of buyers. They're not the big four banks. Often the big four banks will recommend to their clients to use these guys. Often mortgage brokers will recommend to their clients to use these guys. But a deposit bond is very good if you don't have a liquid deposit to buy.
Yeah. And are they expensive to use? Because I'd imagine this is quite a lot of risk from their perspective.
Yeah, they manage their risk really well. So it's generally 1% of the bond amount that it costs. So I don't think that's expensive. So if it's $100,000 deposit, $1,000 will be the deposit bond. $1,500, I don't know, whatever I think it's around that 1%. But as the people that are providing the bond, like Deposit Power, they want assurance. So they do the due diligence to make sure that they're going to get their money if you don't proceed on that purchase. For example, most bond providers will ask to see a signed exchanged contract and fill out all the paperwork. So they want to see that you have sold and that you do have those available funds within your sale for them to guarantee them up for your purchase.
Okay. All right. What was the next question? I got a little bit lost in that answer. We got a question though. We got a comment. Good morning, Jeff. Hope you're well.
Jeff Luby.
You said that some vendors accept it. Is it a condition that it's at their discretion? It's not a.
Absolutely. Yeah, so look, I think you can insist on the type of deposit that you want to take as a seller, and if you are offered a deposit bond by a buyer, you've got the right to say no. Pretty rare. I've generally seen. I've never seen it refused by a seller. I've never seen it cashed in by a seller. I've never seen a purchaser roll over.
That's interesting.
Bond. It's pretty solid.
So for anyone, even for a property owner that has got they're selling, they shouldn't be put off by a purchaser looking to pay the deposit through this method. It's all legit. It works.
Absolutely. And also you've got the what we've spoken about this morning is you've sold and you got no cash to put a deposit down. We've explored deposit bond. Another option which is really important in a negotiation and when issuing a contract is release of deposit. So when you are a seller, you can put in your contract that you absolutely insist that the deposit that's paid to you is usable by you for the purchase of another property. And often if you've sold a property, it's too late to ask. So just a word of warning out to people that are selling out there or going to sell out there, you may ask that your deposit, that when you're selling, that you can use it for the purchase of another property. It's an even faster and more and less costly way than a deposit bond. Now, sometimes the purchaser will say no. The purchaser's solicitor will say no. That they insist the stake or that deposit actually stays visible in the trust account. Neutral party real estate agent sitting there. But it's not a bad little hack because, again, we don't have that 100,000 or 200,000 sitting around in a bank account ready to go on a redraw or a line of credit or cash. So, having a deposit bond or release a deposit really important for the deal.
Mark, quick question for you. With a release of deposit, can you, might be a silly question, can you just spend that on whatever you want?
No, it's in the contract and it says what you can spend it for. So normally when you're a seller and you're putting it in your contract saying, I would like to use the deposit for the purchase, it will say for the purchase of another property, or it'll say, look, sometimes we've even had some renovations that need to be completed, and that's gone into that contract saying the seller can use up to $10,000 for renovations, and they can use the remainder of the deposit for a deposit on another property. So it can be additional, and that will be written into the sales contract. A lot of people just strike it out unless it's negotiated back in by the agent.
Interesting. And why would a purchaser have that crossed out? Because you're going to lose the deposit anyway, won't you, if you pull out? So why does it matter what it's going to be going to?
Because that's really held in escrow, for both parties. So when a deposit's paid, it's actually paid as good faith that you're going to proceed to settlement, that you are going to hand those property keys over and settle on that property 6 weeks later. So that deposit is held on behalf of both parties, for both parties. Often an agent is also looking for his stake as well to get paid as well. So it's that's what that deposit also sometimes gets used for. When it settles, the agent will adjust their fee, which is interesting because people think that, and sometimes an agent has to be paid up front or on exchange, for instance. Not the case. They get paid on settlement, and the agent often will adjust their fee off that 10% deposit, so the seller doesn't have to come up with that money on settlement. But yeah, I think that people just freak out a little bit. They insist it's got to stay there until the transaction's complete. It just depends on the level of comfort that the purchaser has with the seller. Sometimes if it's a company, they'll have less comfort than a natural person's name or a natural person, for instance.
Yeah. Do you think that puts people off a little bit? Jeff put in fear there. I think fear is probably quite a big one because it's so stressful. If there's so many components of the deal coming together, do you think having it, as small as things like having it in a company name rather than or a superannuation name rather than having a personal name could, sway a vendor's choice as who to proceed with?
Definitely does. Yeah. It's people prefer to pursue a natural person rather than a company. So if a company is selling and a company wants to release a deposit, then when they're selling something, then purchase solicitors sometimes look into the company a bit harder when they're making that decision.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. So that's a little bit about deposit bonds. Another option. Is there any other options?
Deposit bond, release a deposit. They are your main two options off the top of my head. I think, look, I just had a lot of conversations last week about it where I had one client saying they had a 12-week settlement. They want to physically settle on the property before they go and buy another property. And I was like, no, dude, you've got your deposit, your exchange, you can get a deposit bond. And he's like, what's that? So that's, it's important, I think, to know these dimensions of the deal. And they are the two main things. I can't think of any other way that you'd conjure up a deposit. You could go and borrow money from the bank for a short period.
As like a line of credit. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. And to get this, you just need to talk to a broker, maybe talk to an agent or your bank, and they can refer you back to someone.
Yeah, well, I had a client the other day in Manly Vale just go direct to the bond provider. They filled out the application form and it's done. Oh, this is good to know. It's done almost within hours. Once they have the completed paperwork, which is a couple of pages of paperwork, they want to know, where you've sold, who your agent was, how much you sold for, front page of the contract. Once they got that and payment, the credit card payment, they'll actually issue it straight away. It's real quick because they appreciate it's very sensitive times, so they're quick.
So to get to this stage, you need to have a signed. Sorry, Mike, we just got to. To get to this stage, you need to have a property in your name on a contract, unconditional.
Absolutely. So most of these scenarios we spoke, or all these scenarios we spoke about today, are you already own a property, you don't have the liquid cash for a deposit, and what are your options?
Right. Okay. So it is time sensitive, but you almost can't plan ahead too much for this one. It's something you act on in the moment.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, there you go.
Get it straight away. But certainly Google deposit bond, have a bit of a read up on it, guys. It is an option. Hopefully we covered most of the facets to it today. And happy Monday.
Have a good one. Rainy Sydney.
See you later. Thanks, Billy. See you, mate. Bye.